Hi again, welcome to another lecture. So at this stage of the semester, you will have already formed in groups, decided which grant application you're going to go for, so either the AsiaLink residency or the Antarctica Fellowship, and you will have started to brainstorm and research and break down what your major project is really about. So this lecture I'm going to talk to you about the first assessment, which is the poster proposal. And the reason why I've designed the unit in this way is so you get an opportunity to propose your project at the early stages of your project management and get valuable preliminary feedback about the aspects of your project before you launch into the more detailed research and writing of your grant application. So yes, you are pursuing one major project, but it's broken up into two assessments. Okay, so I'm going to open up my PowerPoint presentation. So your poster assessment is worth 20% of your overall grade. You're asked to pitch your major project with text and graphics that clearly communicates the core aims, objectives, elements, and method of your major project. So what is most important here is that your poster successfully communicates what your project is really about, how you're going to go about it, what its aims are, while also using visual aids also. So even though visual aids do help, make sure that they help to convey and unpack and deliver the necessary information rather than acting as superfluous decoration. With a poster assessment, just like other posters in the workforce and in academia, every little bit of space really does count. So try not to be as decorative, be more informative. Now, what is really important is that your poster conveys the purpose of the project, its aims and its objectives. So you might want to think about what the differences are between aims and objectives. The background of the project, so you want to be doing research about where you're going to go. So that might be in Antarctica or somewhere in Asia in the host locations. And do also some research about the project that you've designed and if there are similar projects elsewhere in the world or in the actual place that you're going to. So the more research you do at this stage, the stronger your project is going to be. I want to also be able to see the methods deployed in researching and undertaking the project, so what you're actually going to do once you reach your destination, whether that be Antarctica or somewhere in Asia. And also demonstrate the preliminary findings. So there needs to be a reason why your project exists. So it's also really important that you demonstrate an understanding that your project needs travel in order for it to actually exist. So remember that a grant application, just like and poster presentations, they're usually performed in a competitive setting. So you need to show why your project is really unique, why it needs to happen, why you need to go to this place. And the more convincing you are about that, even at the preliminary stages, such as in your poster project, really the better. Now remember what those assessment outcomes are, which is clearly communicated all over the LMS, which is to demonstrate rudimentary professional skills in the development and completion of a project-based poster, to provide evidence of an ability to report project aims, findings and outcomes to date in a visual format, and also to demonstrate a capacity to research, as well as reference, of course, and provide succinct information relevant to the project. Now, doing a poster proposal is really tricky because you've got a finite amount of space and you need to be able to convey the really core aspects of your project in a clear, succinct and informed manner. So keep those assessment outcomes in mind. The reason why we have these assessment outcomes is that we want to make sure that you do learn these kinds of professional skills, which are common skills that are used in government, in the arts, and a lot of bureaucratic systems as well. So it's a really strong part of reporting and project management in the workforce. Posters and applications for tender and grant applications are a communication strategy It's a framework that documents and clearly outlines the rationale for your desired outcomes, the proposed information, communication or media management campaign or a project. So this is something that you're doing at university, but it is a skill that you will refine in the workforce at some point. So a poster proposal is often used when you're pitching a project, like in this setting, but it also happens when you need to communicate to your colleagues what your project has been about to date. So during the project, updating stakeholders, colleagues, or the community about the progress of your project so that it becomes a progress report. And there's often posters used at the end of a project which communicates the final reports, publishes the outcomes, advertises to stakeholders, colleagues, or the community what your project was really about. So this is why we ask you to do a poster proposal, because it is a common milestone in the professional workforce. So it's a part of project management. So management and reporting occurs in most places with bureaucratic systems in place, such as government, major corporations, non-government organisations, etc. So poster proposals or posters are really important because they update the project stakeholders on the progress of the project. It ensures that the project is on track for timely completion. It helps manage any issues arising that may impact on the project's success, and that's probably more applicable for this assessment because what is happening is that you're communicating to me and your tutor what your project is about, and we will be able to talk to you about your project and anticipate any issues that are probably going to arise, and give you some direction about what you need to research on, what you need to unpack more, and where more detail is needed. It helps also in the workforce to manage any unanticipated costs and risks because you're going to be communicating to other people what your project is about, and the same thing happens in this assessment. They also help to record and discuss any learning curves in anticipation of future projects, so what you would have done differently in the workforce with your project, for instance. And so these kinds of project management progress reports are often in the form of a poster presentation, which is visual, a report, obviously, that is written, or oral presentation. So this is a mechanism which is used in the workforce quite a lot to inform, update, and reflect on projects. And here we are in this unit where you are proposing and informing your peer students and also the teaching staff what your project is about, which is really exciting. It's really fun seeing what the students come up with. A lot of students have been so creative and really energized by this project. So it's really fun for me, at least, to see. So when you're developing your poster, make sure that you gather the information that you will be using. So project proposal material, method, research, other activities, outcomes. Think about the what, the how, and why about your project. So what is your project really about? How are you going to pull this project off, and why are you doing this project? Why is it important that you go to Antarctica or somewhere in Asia as your host location? What are you trying to achieve in communicating this information? Are you just reporting back to the community in Hong Kong what it's like to be in Antarctica, or are you going to go deeper and try to have more experimental modes of communication engagement and cross-cultural communication? When you're developing your poster, visualization is really important. Content and style will depend on your audience. Try to think from the audience's perspective here. Be clear about the background, the methodologies, or the technical details, and balance your visual information with your written information. So next in this lecture, I'm going to show to you some previous student projects. Now keep in mind that I'm not telling you how well or how poorly these students went. I want you to get a bit of an insight on what other students have done in the past and try to think about the strengths and the weaknesses of their projects. I will show you what a group of students have created, and then I'll give you some of the feedback that the teaching staff gave to that project. Okay, so first of all, here is a project called Spirit of Antarctica. You can see that there is a balance of text and visuals, although there's a good quarter of the poster that is quite free of space. So they've got background, purpose, objectives, methodology, research. The purpose of the project is to raise international awareness in conserving Antarctica by refreshing the appreciation of efforts via new media platforms. Those new media platforms are social media like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, etc. So the objectives are to change the public's perception of conservation efforts and highlight the significance of the individual role of the researchers in Antarctica. They wanted to also attract prospective researchers to apply for the fellowship. So what they had as their methodology was broken up before the trip, during the trip, and after the trip. Before the trip, they wanted to create awareness and select interested participants through interviews. So they were going to interview people living in Antarctica, mostly researchers, scientists, etc. During the trip, they were going to do a weekly series of 10-minute clips featuring 3 participants that would be uploaded onto social media. So 10-minute clips featuring 3 participants. After the trip, when they returned back to Hong Kong, they proposed to have public participation in a live e-symposium. An e-book will be made available to download for conservation funds as well. So that's how they reflected on the project. They've done some research and they've done some background information, which is excellent to see. I've also noticed that there are some corporations listed below. So the feedback that we gave the Spirit of Antarctica was that there was more focus on the output of the project and less information about what will actually be done in Antarctica. There needs to be more details about the time, the research and the engagement when they're on the trip. So the focus for the actual grant application is wanting to know what people are going to do when they're in Antarctica. That is the focus of the project. So there needs to be also a stronger focus on the actual selection criteria of the grant application. Private sponsorship is problematic because this is a non-for-profit government initiative. So depending on Lottery West, Vivid and the museum, etc., to fund your way is conflicting for the nature of the actual grant application. The teaching staff also found that the term conservation is used quite loosely and there needs to be more specification about what the focus is of conservation, such as the conservation of the fauna, glaciers, air quality, biodiversity, quality of the water. Conservation is important, sure, but what would have been more appropriate for the poster presentation was to narrow that down and think about what it is that the group wanted to raise awareness of and what they're aiming to conserve in the first place. So on to another poster proposal. Here is Reimagining Thai Silk. This group decided to do the Agelink residency and try to reinvigorate traditional modes of using Thai silk. So Thai silk is renowned for its quality and design. However, the traditional trade of the Thai silk industry is facing decline in face of consumerism and capitalism. The image of Thai silk is mostly perceived as old-fashioned and is often a luxury textile which is made into traditional dress. So what they wanted to do was kind of reimagine traditional styles and traditional silk making and relive or reframe it in a contemporary context. So that was working with fashion design students. They wanted to engage, promote and sustain Thai silk. They've done some research about economic challenges and consumer merchant producer relationships. And they've got the method of their project, which is to have an exhibition, a designer's showcase, which ties in with the annual Thai Silk Festival, design a fashion show on campus, have artist talks and forums, and then have a short film series. So that's quite a lot that they're packing in while they are at the host location. So the feedback that the teaching staff gave this group of students was that More research could have been done about the past projects that have worked in a similar way. Not all research has to be about cultural exchange and facilitating community engagement. Remember to cite all research and all claims. Whenever you're quoting someone else or using someone else's statistics, it's very important that you cite where you got that from. And that shows how much research you've done. The more that you cite other people, often in written assessments, the more you're showing the teaching staff that you've done research. And that's a really great thing. That's really what we want to see. There could have been more project management and details on the methods, and there could have been a stronger focus on the significance of place, identity and history. So more of a conversation between the group and the students that they were working with. Okay, I've got another one here which is called Preserving the Indonesian Batik Culture. They've got their aims, a synopsis of the project, some research, background and methodology. So the aim of the project will be a Singapore-Indonesia exchange program. These students were in Singapore over the span of 6 to 12 weeks. They said, our project's mission is to learn the ancient or traditional methods of making batik, as the art has numerous symbolic meanings in Indonesian culture and identity. As a reciprocal, we shall conduct short-term batik painting classes with our collaborative partner, Art Science Museum of Singapore. So they were learning about this art while also wanting to have a reciprocal communication. So they have a synopsis here, which was focusing on Indonesian batik painting, and learning about the long history and how batik painting is very closely connected with identity, communication and history and community as well. So in the methodology of the project, they said that they will be engaging in mixed method approaches to gather information for the project. Firstly, they would be conducting a series of interviews with traditional Indonesian batik artists and Indonesian youths. In addition, they were going to conduct surveys to understand the relevance of Indonesian batik art in today's world. So you see in that methodology there's a few differences between that and the aim of the project. Make sure that your aims and methods tie in quite nicely. The feedback that the teaching staff gave, preserving the Indonesian batik culture, was that there was room to be more specific as to what the symbolic meaning of Indonesian culture and identity batik actually creates. There was also opportunity for more background research. For instance, if batik is a cultural expression, what does it really tell us about the community? Does it foster social bonds? Is the cultural history tied up in the practice, and if so, how? What is the output of the project? What will you do with the information about batik aside from the exhibition? So what were they going to actually do with those surveys and interviews? So you need to use a survey for an actual outcome. So I also encourage students to think beyond creating awareness, because just creating an awareness falls a little bit short of reciprocal communication, cross-cultural communication as well. So here's another project called Ascend 4897. There's not very much text, a lot of diagrams here. The aim of the project was to empower the visually impaired and give them the ability to relive the experience of climbing Mount Vision Massif through audio aids, which is a really creative, quite bold project really, to take people who are visually impaired up a mountain with visual aids. It sounds very extreme sport, courageous and very creative as well. So they had a timeline for the expedition, they had objectives, had done some research, preliminary research as well. The feedback that the teaching staff gave 4897 was that there could have been more research about the actual conditions, the problems and the journey itself, as well as how and why this project needs to be performed. Why is it important to have visually impaired people go up on an expedition? Often people who are visually impaired are disempowered in contemporary society, so that might have been one of the reasons or the justifications as to why the project needs to happen. Further research could have been done on visually impaired people and a justification on why them specifically. could have been a little bit more focused on project management more than the timeline. So aside from what you're going to do, how are you going to do it? Who are these people? How are they going to be guided? How will you ensure that people won't get injured, for instance? And there could have been more research about climate change. So the poster proposal talks about climate change. They needed to be a bit more direct with their knowledge rather than talking kind of around climate change as well. Okay, one final example here, which is Antarctica, Into the Unknown, which is designed very well. I mean, the students were very savvy with how they, I guess, aestheticized and arranged their poster. I mean, it looks very clean and eye-catching, but there wasn't that much information on the actual poster. So Antarctica Into the Unknown was going to be a reality TV show. So 3 members, 3 missions over 3 months to create 10 episodes. They did some research on previous documentaries, and they communicated that their mission was to explore the different kinds of research, experience the life of a researcher, and educate the youth and create awareness. Again, awareness is quite ambiguous here, and I would encourage you all to think more in depth about what awareness you're trying to create, to who and about what. So the project was recording from a researcher's point of view using Google Glass over a certain amount of weeks. And there was going to be a screening via MediaCorp, there's going to be a screening on YouTube, and it was going to be advertised on Twitter. So you can see, again, like another group, there was in conjunction with being advertised with Google, Cathay Pacific and MediaCorp and a few other corporations. Again, this is problematic for a government initiative, which is supposed to be not for profit. So what is really important for you guys is that you think about how viable your project might be. Make sure that it is also realistic. The feedback that the teaching staff gave this poster was that it read more like an advertisement for the reality TV show rather than a pitch or a proposal for the actual project. Because of this, the aims and the purpose are not very clearly outlined and are instead just implied on the poster. There is research on past projects and documentaries, which was great to see, but there also could have been research into why this project needs to take place and how it would be beneficial to either the people starring in the reality TV show or to Antarctica. Again, as I said before, sponsorship is a problem. I encourage you to persuade your audience not by selling them the product, but by rationalising, unpacking and detailing the logistics of the project, which was a main issue with this poster. There was a focus on place, encouraging these students to focus on place and identity and think about what actually could be learned on the TV show, rather than just general awareness. There's a great focus on media communication, but there needed to be a focus on bridging the gap between the project and the grant application. Again, keep in mind that selection criteria for the Antarctica grant application. Okay. I've also got some further links generally about posters. In the professional context, usually academia often uses posters to pitch, promote, reflect and update people about their projects. So keep in mind that the poster project is 20% of your overall grade, that there is some necessary information that you need to put in there, such as the project purpose, aims and objectives, the background on the project, methods deployed in researching and undertaking a project, and the research to date. Please also keep at the back of your mind that selection criteria for the grant application. The more that your project ties into the selection criteria, the stronger your project is going to be. So at this stage, I strongly recommend that you start doing research about the area that you're pitching the project for. Do research about similar projects in the area, but also similar projects elsewhere. And think about how those projects were managed and how they were conducted. Be realistic about your aims and the objectives of the project. In the past, there was a group of students who wanted to do a Beyonce concert in Antarctica, and I don't think that that is, very feasible unless you're best friends with Beyonce. Probably won't happen. Remember to keep in mind that the selection criteria of the AsiaLink and Antarctica grant application is really what both assessments are about. So have that in the back of your mind at this stage. But again, be bold, be creative. It's a really exciting project where you can, hypothesize about what you would do if you went somewhere else and you wanted to learn about another area, and be as creative as you can and have some fun with it. Okay? Thank you very much. I look forward to giving my next lecture to you.